Greetings, invaders. Welcome. My name is Scott, and this is Book Invasion. So today we're going to be talking about Mr. Ben Galley. I'm going to give you a quick bio of Ben. I'm going to talk about Chasing Graves, which is this amazing dark fantasy book which he had written. And then we're going to do an interview with Ben and talk about his writing process and talk about just some other general things, get to know him as a person and what he likes, what he doesn't like, and how he goes through his process. So, here we go.
Book Invasion.
Ben Galley is an author of dark and epic fantasy books who currently hails from Victoria, Canada. Since publishing his debut, The Written, in 2010, Ben has released 9 fantasy novels as well as a crowd-funded graphic novel. From the epic Nordic world of Emaneska, he moved into the Western fantasy with the Scarlet Star trilogy, then a standalone novel about an immortal golem called The Heart of Stone. Ben has recently released a whole new series called the Chasing Graves trilogy, set in an Egyptian-style world where ghosts are bound as slaves for the rich. So let's dive into Chasing Graves. So this was published in December of 2018. This is book 1. He did a rapid release schedule, so book 2 of the series was published in January of 2019. That was called Grim Solace. And book 3, called Breaking Chaos, was published in March of 2019. So December, January, March, a rapid release schedule for all 3 books in the trilogy, which I think is amazing. It gets the energy up, it gets people glued in, and it gets those out and in the readers' hands. So what is Chasing Graves about? Let me give you a synopsis. From award-winning author Ben Galley comes a new dark fantasy trilogy inspired by Egyptian mythology and packed with dark humor, action, and intrigue. The Chasing Graves trilogy is perfect for fans of Michael Moorcock, Brandon Sanderson, Scott Lynch, and Joe Abercrombie. Welcome to Araxes, where getting murdered is just the start of your problems. Meets Caltro Basalt. He's a master locksmith, a selfish bastard, and as his first night in Araxes, stone cold dead. They call it the City of Countless Souls, the colossal jewel of the Arctian Empire, and all it takes to be its ruler is to own more ghosts than any other. For Araxes, the dead do not rest in peace in the afterlife, but live on as slaves for the rich. While Caltro struggles to survive, those around him strive for the Emperor's throne in Araxes' cutthroat game of power. The dead gods whisper from corpses, a soul stealer seeks to make a name for himself with the help of an ancient cult, a princess plots to purge the Emperor from his armored sanctuary, and a murderer drags a body across the desert, intent on reaching Araxes no matter the cost. Only one thing is certain in Araxes, death is just the beginning. So I really love this premise. I love the writing style. I'll tell you, obviously I liked the book. I liked reading it. It was a great story. Ben was a new author to me when I dove into this. I had heard a lot of things about Chasing Graves, and it really just kind of, the style of the writing and the way that his world expands as you read each part of this was pretty amazing. I loved it, really. So in the premise of the book is where, yes, the dead can be... So the premise of the book is, yes, the dead can be kind of resurrected to be kind of this ethereal soul type thing and be owned as slaves for the rich. And Caltro Basalt, he's kind of the anti-hero. You know, he doesn't want to go along with this rich plan. He doesn't really want to do what he's been told to do, so he's kind of the smart alecky anti-hero. He's just like, whatever, I'm not even supposed to be here today, you know, one of those type of things. He's very observant and he knows kind of people's tics. Being a locksmith plays into that role of how to kind of unlock people's different wants and desires, and there are a lot of pieces at play between what his storyline should go through, and then we have another storyline that's parallel about who's going to take over the throne. We meet Nilith, who's going through the desert, dragging a dead body and the soul with it through the deserts on a quest to get to Araxes, which is where Caltro is, so we don't really know what's at play there. And there's just a lot. It's a very wide empire, it's a very big world, and I really enjoyed a lot of it. So without further ado, that's enough of my talking. Check out Chasing Graves, check out Ben Galley's other works. The Chasing Graves trilogy is amazing. Here is my talk with Mr. Ben Galley himself. Sorry for the audio, I was doing it in a coffee shop, there's background noise. and it was kind of a disaster to set up, but we got it done. Ben's an amazing guy. Here's the interview with him, and I hope you enjoy it.
How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yes, a bit tired today. Just a lot of work this week, a lot of different projects to work on. So, yeah, it's got to Friday and I'm a bit knackered. But aside from that, yeah, feeling good. Productive day.
Awesome. Yeah, so I had just about 6 questions, pretty
Cool.
brief, pretty short. Let me pull up my list here. All right, so let's go for Chasing Graves. So actually, I started this book last week, and I have about an hour left in the audiobook, which I was hoping I would be done before I went to talk to you. And I was trying
No
it,
worries.
and then I was just, yeah, I couldn't focus. But it's really great. I love it. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And this series, this trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
so it was obviously published in the rapid time frame within like 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
So between this series and say like your other, the Emaneska or the Scarlet Star trilogy,
Mhm.
what differences have you noticed, I suppose, between this series and the other as opposed to the rapid time frame? Have you seen more response or more awareness since it's kind of been out there more frequently?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, this week is Emaneska has been kind of quietly growing over the last 6 years since I finished off that series, and so yeah, since then it's kind of been bubbling away and stuff like that. But only now has it somehow just kind of it seems to have erupted, and it was a bestseller over December, just before releasing Chasing Graves. So that's been kind of weird for me, but it shows the longevity of a series, and it shows that constant marketing can build things up. But yeah, with the Chasing Graves trilogy, it seems to be I've reached kind of I would say a similar level of notoriety, shall I say? With doing the rapid release, it seems I had basically was talking about my trilogy for about 4 to 5 months straight. As you might have seen on Twitter and Facebook, every day just talking about it, because there's always something new to actually talk about. It wasn't the same sort of content over and over again, because so much was condensed into that time, like cover reveals, sneak peeks, chapters here and there, loads of stuff. So yeah, I found out a lot to talk about, and I think that kind of increased social media activity, content, loads of interviews and things here and there, cover reveals left, right, and center. I think that really, really helped kind of shoot it up, the charts and up people's TBRs, which is always nice.
Yeah, I love that. I like the YouTube channel too, since I only started in like the booktube realm late last year, and so I'm like getting into that YouTube space, which is really cool. I've been watching
I love YouTube.
And your updates, and it's been awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I have quite a lot of fun with YouTube. I've been doing it since about 2012, I think, pretty much when I started writing and publishing full time. Well, not full time, but professionally. And it's kind of like a fun, almost hobby.
Yeah, it is. It's great. All right, so let's see. And so usually before I do interviews, I research and I look at your past like interviews and blog posts and stuff like that. So I noticed that you mentioned that the world building is usually the first kind of task when you start a new book. So
usually, yeah.
Between your series, what kind of what have you learned after you've put out all these books on how you world build? Like what are some of your mistakes that you've made, and what have you learned from doing that?
Yeah, I think, because world building is kind of, to me, it's the kind of canvas on which the story's set and the characters interact. You could refer to it as almost like a stage at a theater as well. So for me, I kind of have to have, I have to build that and then, bring in the details, the plot, the story, and things like that. So even when it's been the inspiration comes from something else, for instance, with, I've got a big old pile here, so I'm not going to drag them out. Oh, here you go. But yeah, so the Heart of Stone, which is somewhere in there, that was kind of the inspiration of the character, the actual, the idea of a 400-year-old golem. So the idea for that, the inspiration comes first, but then I kind of world build around it, and then I go back to the character and the kind of plot and the structure of it and flesh it out. And so, it's always kind of a fun part for me. And when I first got into it, I was Doing the very general things where the world is very, very small. It only exists around the character.
Yeah.
Quite almost like a fog of war in Age of Empires. I don't know if you ever used to play that, but when you'd send off, like,
Yep.
a battalion or something, you could only see where they'd gone, and the rest would be
Right.
grey and black. So it's a bit like that. And I was a bit more of a discovery writer on my debut series, even though I'd planned a lot. So I found myself, just kind of building small scenes, small areas, and things like that. And then as the series progressed, so did the world. With future series, even with standalones like The Heart of Stone, Scarlet Star, Chasing Graves, it was I made a concerted effort to actually sit down and plan out the whole of the world, even if bits weren't going to be used. For instance, there's a huge amount of history of Scarlet Star, the alternate history of the world that I just planned out just to see how I would arrive at the era that the story took place. The rest of it's never going to see the light of day. Well, it might do.
It's there.
Yeah, might dig it out, but it helps me and it fuels my ideas, and it enables me to, as I'm going through, just add richness to the dialogue and have characters say, oh, it's not like that back in this place. That's never going to be seen, but it adds a layer of richness and detail to the book. But aside from that, my kind of method is, stage by stage, I kind of work, outwards in. So I get the rough landscape, land masses. I'll even draw a little map and things like that to help me kind of figure out where things are. And then I kind of focus in and work on cities, landscapes, certain different climates, landmarks, things like that. And then I'll go down to kind of the character level or the plot level.
Yeah.
And put in, basically my technique is to emulate what we have in the real world and translate or twist or at least represent that in some sort of way in my world. And I find what that does, it means I'm kind of ticking a load of boxes that people might not ordinarily or immediately think of. So, down to things like travel and transport, religions, foods, fashion, manners and etiquette and things like that, social events. I'll fit in basically anything I can look out the window and see. I'll try to twist it and put some sort of version into it, some version of it into the books. And that, again, I just find adds, layer upon layer of detail, I hope.
Awesome. No, it's been really good. Just with Chasing Graves, it's like the world that they traverse through the markets and just when they go out into the outside of the realm and come to Araxes and they see all that stuff, and it's just like you can tell it's well fleshed out.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
And let's see. So I have a question. So for those that don't know, in Chasing Graves, people can bind souls of the dead. So my question to you is, any celebrity, famous person in history, if you were to have their soul binded to you and then be your slave or companion, who in history would you choose?
That's a good question. Let's think. It's either going to be someone I really despise and would like to have them as kind of my servant and have them do stuff for me. Or it would be, I think, someone who I just love to have around more as a kind of, I don't know, comrade who just happens to be a ghost. I don't know. Yeah.
Do like the prolific writer and pull up like Mark Twain or something?
That's it. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Someone who would have. It'd be interesting to chat to. I've always said someone I've always wanted to sit down and one of those fictional dinner scenarios where you get to invite people from history town, things like that. I think Da Vinci, if I could, bind his ghost and just get all the secrets that he had back in the day and see what he makes of the modern world. So that'd be a good person. Think if it was someone I hated. I don't know if I hate someone that much that's in the real world. I mean, there's a few people I could mention in the current political climate. I'll just leave it there. But yeah, I think someone inspiring that could have a psychic.
Yeah, it could always backfire. Then Da Vinci would just be like the meanest guy and like not cooperative, and you'd just be like, "Come on, man, help me out."
That's it. And now he's somehow immortal, and I've kind of created a monster. Yeah, immortal Da Vinci.
Bad roommates who's always just leaving his stuff everywhere.
Yeah, that's it. Walking through walls, etc.
Come on, Leonardo.
Yeah.
All right. So the other question I have is that if you were Shade and you were sold at the soul market by say one of these soul freedom fighters, and they gave you your own world, your own life again, what type of what dream job or role, I guess in the current world,
In the current
Would you
one.
want
Okay.
would you choose if you were a shade?
So if I was a shade, I could do anything. I've got kind of immortality in the modern world. I think, yeah, I would like to do something very exciting because I think knowing I was a ghost and not
Yeah.
much could hurt me besides copper.
Yeah.
I think I would do something, yeah, dangerous. I'd be into some sort of extreme sport or extreme kind of, I've always had an obsession with anything, machinery based. So planes, cars. So I think, being a Red Bull stunt pilot would be great fun. I always watch that when it's on. Something else, I mean, I've always had a fascination with space as well. So it'd be great to just go out there and not have to worry about,
Yeah.
the dangers of being in space, which is
Yeah.
kind of part and parcel. So that'd be fun. But yeah, I think something, something otherworldly if I could, because yeah, that's kind of some of my original dreams before I ended up becoming a writer. Yeah, it was to fly planes or get into space. But yeah, NASA and Elon Musk don't return my calls anymore, so I've given up on that.
Eventually, yeah. All right. The next one here I have is that if your books were turned into songs and music, what band or bands would you want to create them?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think for the SCARLET style trilogy, given it's sort of like set in an alternate 1867, but it's got a very kind of country, Wild West vibe to it. I'd want someone like, I don't know, completely gone up. Johnny Cash. I'll try to think of the actual, because I've actually got in each of my books, just going to use this as a prop. In each of my books, I try and add, suggested listening playlists and things like that.
Yeah.
So you'll find like playlists of what's kind of inspired me at the same time. And even though it wasn't a huge country lean in, Blood Feud and Blood Moon and Blood Rush, I think Johnny Cash could bring a very kind of soulful, epic feel to it, like something out of like Hurt, one of my favorite songs that he does. So I think that would work. For Heart of Stone, that's got to be some sort of rock and roll. I can feel that maybe the dark scenes, the brutal scenes where he's going to war, some sort of juxtaposition with some kind of hardcore electro swing. Not electro swing, sorry, hardcore sort of like a, I don't know, modern rock and roll music. I'm trying to think of a band that would do that. I think they've just merged together two genres that shouldn't be together. I would think for Emaneska, my original Nordic series, I'd have to go sort of AC/DC, Black Sabbath, epic, maybe throw in a bit of Led Zeppelin as well, just sort of, the epic, kind of rousing, anthemic choruses, big vocals, sort of like, arena rock and roll. That would be fun. And then, so I don't know, for Chasing Graves, the Chasing Graves trilogy is kind of a mix of everything. Again, it's grimdark, so it's a bit metal. I would say a band that I've kind of become obsessed with recently is Arcane Roots. I think we've actually chatted about them before on Twitter, and it's just they have the ability to, I mean, they're an up-and-coming band as well. I mean, they're getting bigger and bigger all the time, which is great. But I think they would bring so much in terms of just like this epic. Like they have their songs that they start off very small and gentle and slow, and suddenly by the end of it, it is just shocking and it's awe-inspiring. And I think they would sort of bring a certain vibe to Chasing Graves, because it's kind of like Caltro's story in a way. It starts off small, coming into the city, and by the end of it, without spoiling anything, becomes gets involved in the entire city's politics.
They have a great dynamic with all of their stuff, and I've been obsessed since like their first album. They're crazy. Next level stuff.
They really are.
I noticed. I saw. I think it was on your blog or when you had done a blog post somewhere else that there was. I think I found a Spotify playlist for Chasing Graves somewhere. And I know Arcane Roots was on there, and
absolutely,
like Fighters, I think, were on there.
So
That's really cool. I like to see that feel, because you can get a lot more, I guess, emotional feeling from the music than you can by just like reading the back of a book or something.
Absolutely, that was kind of my hope, and I mean, my tastes do lean quite heavy, but at the same time, I do like electronic things. I do like, I listen to a lot of kind of piano music, Ludovico Einaudi, things like that. So, my taste range, quite far and wide. So I like to show that to people and see what's kind of inspired certain moods in between the chapters.
Yeah. Do you listen while you write, like
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah.
I know some people listen to different modes depending on distractions and whatnot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can't listen to anything too wordy, so I've got like rap playlist and things like that, and it just those aren't my usual writing playlists. It's kind of I don't know with metal, certain metal songs that I listen to. I've been listening to a band called Picturesque, and I mean, it's their vocals are a little screamy here and there, which I kind of like. It's my
Yeah.
bag, but I find that sort of vocal where it's kind of in the mix with the guitars and the distortion and things like that, it just kind of molds in. So I'm not listening too much about the lyrics. It's all just about the harmonies, the flow, the melody. And just the hammering of the drums and guitar. But yeah, so that kind of works for me. But yeah, it'll either go from that sort of side to real peaceful, gentle, like the American Beauty soundtrack. The Revolutionary Road soundtrack is also one of my favorites. Anything by Thomas Newman, basically. Yeah.
All right. So the other book other question is, what book would you figuratively die for to have in your collection?
Ooh, Chasing Graves die for. In terms of to have to own just a copy of it.
Yeah, just to have in the private Ben Galley glass case.
That's it, as in one of these. No, I see. So if I could have written it, yeah, I would have. I would have. I mean, there's kind of like an element. I mean, it's one of my favorite books already, but I wished that I had American Gods in my in my backlist, because I mean, not the fact it's become incredibly successful. It just, that book to me is there's a perfect marriage between the way that Neil Gaiman writes, but also the subject matter. And the kind of the hints of mythology, the deeper story, but set in a kind of modernish world, just ticks so many boxes. And it was one of the books that actually got me to write, my original Emaneska trilogy way down the pile. Because sorry, Emaneska series, it's a quadrilogy. Because I was kind of dabbling, with what I wanted to do with my life back in 2007 and 8, maybe 9. And I didn't really know what to do apart from carry on working in the dead end jobs that I was working. I'd been following music, but that had kind of fallen by the wayside. And my friend just handed me a copy of this book. He said, "Just take a break, man. Have a read. Just get out of your head. This book is perfect for it." I was like, you know what? It's been a while since I've read a book. I've just been so obsessed with working and music. And I dug into it. I think I finished it within 2-3 days. Just absolutely devoured it. And yeah, like I said, it was the way that Gaiman's word choice, the way he structures sentences, and just the way he gets into the mind of a character and somehow reflects you in that character. It's just genius the way he does that. And then of course, Norse mythology. Germanic mythology, European, African, Asian mythology all thrown in there. It was just, it's an absolute dream to read. So I wish I'd written that book. Yeah.
And then let's see, what book might be the most surprising that we might find in your collection of books?
I think it's a book that I reference a lot. And it wasn't really, again, got made into a film. The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. It's not one I think a lot of people would peg me for a big fan of, but it's up there in my top 10 books of all time. Again, not my usual subject matter, even though I do kind of like history and war, war history specifically. That book was set in Germany during World War II, and is a evacuee story, but from the German side rather than the usual British side, like you see with Railway Children and Goodnight Mr. Tom, that sort of thing. But it's just, again, the language Markus Zusak used in that. And I was not expecting that. It was just recommended to me. It was kind of a charity shop buy. I think I saw it one day. I thought, yeah, I've heard of this. I'll give it a try. Again, no fantasy in there, I thought. And yet the way that it's told from the viewpoint of the Angel of Death, and he's the main narrator of the entire book, it just blew me away. And that gave me enough of a fantasy hook to get in there. And again, the metaphors and similes and descriptions that Marcus uses, it's just stunning. They're just, I've never heard him describe just a smoky sky, or I've never heard a smoky sky described like that. The way he does that, I wish I could. I'm not going to quote it because I'm going to not do it justice. But it just really, really blew me away, and it will forever surprise me and stay on my shelf in the top spot. Yes.
All right, those are all the questions that I have.
Awesome.
What are you working on next? What can we expect from you?
Well, currently I'm going back to the original world of Emaneska, so I'm going all the way back down this pile to to my original book, to my original.
I heard buzzings of a graphic novel. Is that out already?
No, it came out a couple of years back, so that was one of my big
Oh,
projects after I finished it. Yeah, it was to do a graphic novel adaptation of the written, which was done art by a great guy called Michael Shipley, who did an amazing job of it. So yeah, hopefully in the future I'd love to do the whole series in graphic novel. But yeah, for the moment it's just going back to the world. I'm doing another trilogy called the Skeleton Chronicles, and that's set after the events of the Emaneska series, maybe like a decade or two on. And yeah, stakes have been risen. Yeah, stuff's going to go down. It's going to be hopefully more epic than the first one. I've learned a huge amount about my writing style and just general language and prose since the first series. So I think hopefully it's going to be a step up, and apparently people are looking forward to it. So I'm happy, and I'm working on it as quick as I can.
Awesome. All right, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Talking to you. Put all
you
the
too.
links and all where to find you down below.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be interviewed. Thank you very much for having me on.
Awesome. All right, sir.
Thank you.
So that was the interview. I hope you liked that. I'll put some links and details below for Mr. Ben Galley. He also does an independent author consulting business. He does an animated book cover type of business where he can take a book cover and animate some graphics. Maybe I'll throw some up here for that, which is really awesome. I love that. So I hope you like Mr. Ben Galley. Check him out. I want to throw out a big thanks to the Right Reads and everyone on the blog tour. Thank you so much for including me, even though I'm not a blogger. I'm a YouTuber. This was so much fun. Thank you again to Mr. Ben Galley and everyone who took part in the blog tour. Thank you to the Right Reads for organizing it. It was amazing. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.